Mike King, who is a crime and cult investigator and who's appeared on this show several times, was given an inside look into Warren Jeff's compound and those caves. And yes, Mike King was allowed to bring a camera. Our own Brian Enton caught up with Mike King and his videos at CrimeCon.
So what happened, Brian, was actually a few years ago, I just decided to call Willie Jessup on the phone, and I was driving out to Colorado City and Hilldale, and I said, Willie, I'm coming out and I want to have lunch with you. And his response, I can only envision it, was hell no, and he hung up the phone. And I think curiosity killed the cat, because about an hour later he called me back and he said, I'll give you 5 minutes. So we got together, and it was really interesting watching two people who actually despised each other come together. And we started talking. It ended up taking us 8 hours to get through our discussion. And it ended up with me climbing in his truck and driving around Colorado City and Hilldale. As I said, I want to explore the baby cemetery because I want to know why 250 babies can be buried without ever having a birth certificate, and how 250 babies could die without ever having a death certificate. I want to know why. And to be able to experience and have him tell me what was going on from his perspective. To talk about things like the secret caves, because after the raid on Short Creek in 1953, if you remember the history lesson, the FLDS took this stance of never again are we going to allow this to happen. Not only were they preparing for the end of the world from a religious standpoint, but they were temporally preparing for it. And they started digging caves that I heard about all the years I was investigating out there, but I could never prove, I could never find. When I talked to members of the FLDS, this is a church of 13,000 people, they would say they don't exist. We've heard about it, but they don't exist. I would talk to leaders in the church who fell away and said, nah, it doesn't exist. And I said, Willie, there's too much smoke. They got to exist. And it wasn't until about a year later, Brian, Willie actually called me and he said, you've always wanted to stay in the house I built for Warren Jeffs. And if you remember, that was a house built for 87 wives. And he said, I'll make you a deal. If you agree to come out here on your own, I'll let you stay the night in the house alone. I'll clear all my wives, all my kids, everybody out of the house. He said, I'll give you free reign. Well, what he didn't know was I had testimony from people for years that would tell me where the secret passageways were and other things. And he turned the keys over to me. It was kind of a crazy moment because my wife was like, you're gonna do what? And I ended up spending the night in this home that he built. And I found those spaces where the false walls were and other things.
You did, just by yourself there?
I was by myself. Isn't that the dumbest thing you've ever heard of?
Just exploring by yourself?
Me and my Glock, I might say.
Yeah. Were you nervous at all?
I was very nervous, but how do you turn down something like that? Anyway, at 6 o'clock the next morning, I hear a tap on my door, and that kind of brings you out of a sleep. And I open up the door, and there's one of his wives standing in her prairie dress, the typical FLDS hairstyle. She hands me a key and a set of coordinates and said, Willie said you could go inside. And I went inside the secret caves.